So I want to talk about this really bizarre experience I had on Nitrous once. Nitrous and LSD. So this was years ago. I was at my friend's house, and we were tripping. I think this was the first time I ever took LSD, and we decided to do nitrous balloons afterwards. And I've never had an experience like it before or since. Like, you might have seen my other video where I talked about ayahuasca, and that was crazy. But like, this was a much shorter lived thing, but nothing, this was like the craziest thing I've ever experienced. It's hard to explain, but yeah, it was, if you do nitrous on LSD, it's like, it's the most intense thing ever. It's just like, it's not horribly intense. Like, it's not, that sounds it's probably off-putting in a way, you know, the idea of it being so intense. It's not, you don't really feel the intensity. You just think about it afterwards. You kind of just like perceive it. But yeah, anyway, every time I would do one, it felt like years went by, and I would disappear into like a completely different world. And it was like, what it felt like was happening was I just went off like somewhere else for years, like literally like hundreds of years, like longer than my lifetime. It was just an enormous amount of time. And then I came back, and I couldn't perceive what had happened, because it was so different that it was like it all just scrambled, like everything in my brain just scrambled. It was like putting a DVD into a CD player, and it's just, you know, the CD player just can't read the DVD. It's not possible. And all I could remember of it were like gold kind of fractals. That's the closest thing I can describe it as. It was like space type stuff, like kind of gold fractals. And I would come back, and I kept seeing this guy opposite me. Every time I saw him, and I came back and I looked around, I saw the real world. It was so fucking funny. It was like, it was funny because it was like the plot twist at the end of a movie. It was like coming back and being like, oh, I was here. Like, this is like, it's so hard to explain. Every time it was, I was going between these two worlds, and there was the awareness was solely at this middle point. It was like here was separate and here was separate, but there was this brief moment where the worlds overlapped, and I felt myself go from this one into this one. And it was so funny to come back to this like human form and this human world, and so ridiculous and insane. But I couldn't remember where I'd been, and I couldn't remember why it was funny, and I couldn't remember why it was so crazy, and I couldn't remember why it felt like hundreds of years had passed. But I'm still sort of totally convinced of it. I can't really get out of my head, like, well, I mean, it doesn't bother me, like it was years ago, but whenever I think about it, I mean, as in I can't dismiss it. I can't easily dismiss it. I still remember it really vividly. And I remember just the feeling of coming back and how funny it was. And it wasn't funny in the way that when you take nitrous, you just laugh at everything. It was like the punchline to like a 1,000-year cosmic joke / like an unbelievable plot twist at the end of life and everything. Like, it was really crazy. And it happened like, I think it happened a couple of times. I think we definitely did the NOS a couple of times, and I think every time it was the same feeling. And sure, maybe it's just drugs. Maybe it's just drugs just do wacky stuff to your brain, you know. Who knows? But it was crazy. And it made me wonder if that will happen at the end of our lives. Like, imagine, say for example, people talk a lot about, you know, is life a simulation? Is life... Imagine we were in a different life before this. We were on a, you know, just say aliens. We were aliens, and we decided to enter the like Earth simulation. And I'm like, oh, I'll pick the Kieran character. I'm going to play as it, you know. And when you're in the game or whatever it is, you have no awareness of anything else. You are in it. You're just in this life, and you can't remember anything that came before. You can't remember that you chose this. You can't remember that there's a whole reality surrounding this. You're just, this is it, and this is all we know for now. And imagine then you die at the end of your, life, and you look around and you recognize everything, and you're coming back and you're realizing like, oh, that life that felt so long where I was on Earth and I was a human, that's like a day. That's like just nothing. That's just like me having a quick go around the merry-go-round, and now I'm back and I'm like, oh, that was intense. Like coming out of one of the Matrix chairs, where they like wake up and they're like, oh shit. Like, and it's made me think that like sometimes like, yeah, I just think like, I think that's quite likely. I think that's something that's quite likely to happen, like when we die. I mean, probably the most likely thing is nothing, realistically, but I'd say like on the list of other like crazy things that might happen, I think one of the most likely things is to wake up and be like, oh Jesus, like, and just suddenly come back into the memory of everything that you were before, whatever like incomprehensible to a human form that might be, but it's interesting / terrifying to think of. I don't know. Yeah, that's all really. If you've done it, if you had any nitrous LSD experiences, I'd be interested to hear. Yeah, as usual, not endorsing it or encouraging it, just talking about it.